The fallout continues after Wednesday's breach of the U.S. Capitol. Twitter now permanently suspending President Trump from its platform. Fox 61's Angelo Bavaro breaks down the latest developments.
It was the screenshot shared around the World Wide Web. The @RealDonaldTrump Twitter account permanently suspended. Twitter says that decision is, quote, due to the risk of further incitement of violence following the riots on Wednesday. And President Trump also blocked from posting on his Facebook and Instagram accounts, quote, indefinitely and for at least the next 2 weeks until the peaceful transition of power is complete, according to Mark Zuckerberg.
It's up to the companies at the end of the day. The companies have the right to do it. And you could say, is it censorship? Maybe, but still the companies have that choice. What it is not an attack on the First Amendment. I keep hearing that a lot, right? That this is an attack on free speech. No, these companies are private and they are allowed to make these decisions.
That's Adam Chiara, who's an associate professor of communication at the University of Hartford. He says that it's important that people remember social media companies are run by humans.
I'm sure they had a very visceral response when they saw rioting and the storming of the Capitol, in their own backyard, in their own home country. It must have been a surreal moment for them to look at this and think, look at the physical consequences to online behavior that is happening on our platforms.
The decision to block President Trump from posting on social media pouring gasoline on the debate about the power of big tech. Leaders in Connecticut also weighing in.
I think moving forward, we have to be careful because it is a fine line on our constitutional rights. And, we don't want to see censorship. That's not what our country's made of. Our country is a country that, our freedom of speech is very important to us.
He's emboldened a group of people that have been sitting around waiting to do the things that they've been doing all along. OK, and I don't need to explain to people what those things are. But I think now is the time, put a muzzle on this guy, remove him so that we can move forward.
Recent focus of big tech regulation has been on Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which President Trump wants repealed. Section 230 protects tech companies from lawsuits over what other people post on their platforms. Opponents argue that companies like Twitter and Facebook should no longer be shielded as neutral platforms when they operate more like a publisher.
Can these companies, are they considered publishers? Are they considered editors? Or are they just a platform? Are they just a communication tool where anyone can post whatever they want? After this, banning a world leader, it is going to make it very hard for these tech companies to continue to argue that they are not editors, that they are not publishers, that they do not make these key decisions. And going into the new administration, this will come up. I can promise you that. This will come up. There will be debate on, does 230 still apply to them? And if it does, are there certain restrictions? Are there certain other kind of regulation that we need to put on them?
Reporting for Fox 61 News, I'm Angelo Bavaro.